Today I was considering while driving, just thinking, I'm always in thought, something systemic or something spiritual. It's just kind of where my mind stays. Anyways, I thought about the episode in scripture where Abraham was wrestling with the angel when he was making his way back to be reconciled with his brother Esau. But it's not that particular scenario. I'm making a comparison. I made a reference recently about, holding on to the angel until he blesses me. But what I want to, try to make a comparison, and hopefully the parallel can, yield some benefit for perspective. So what I'm arguing is that the same way in which Abraham was wrestling with the entity of the spirit so that he might bless him, we as a people are doing the same thing to the system, except for we're clutching onto the wrong kind of thing, the wrong spirit. So we're holding on to governmental systems, we're holding on to brands, we're holding on to the very dollar, the money, we're holding on to the constructs, because we have so much faith in them that we're demanding that they bless us. Now, it may take you a little moment to kind of catch up to that thought and to make the connection, but it's true, because no matter how much he degrades you, kill you, whatever, we have the attitude towards the system that we should have towards God. I'm going to worship you though you slay me. And this is the consequence of misalignment. Like, we have the right energy because mechanically we were designed to endure. Like, that's what's obvious. It's our design, like our capacity as melanated people, sports, this, that, even inventions. That part doesn't necessarily get celebrated like the athleticism does, but it's all there, so mechanically it's obvious who you are, but systemically, the absence of you recognizing who you are through the path of true north, or alignment with source or the Christ pattern. And it is that Christ pattern. He modeled and unfortunately, while men slept, as the scriptures say, folks crept in and sowed tares among the wheat. And now we're completely discombobulated. But, but a very sad point is that our community is not even worth sticking a neck out for anymore. It's just not. I think about the many men in history that felt compelled to make change, and I know that change comes as a consequence of observing pain and experiencing pain and so on and so on. But I would venture to say that we have learned to love the pain. Not only have we learned to love it, but we sing about it. We celebrate the pain. We celebrate killing one another. We celebrate the toxicity of the system and how it's impacted us. We are completely traumatized and delusional. And if someone tries to wake us up, we become so tethered to the toxicity that we would bring harm to the messenger, or betray the messenger, or take whatever deal. You could be bought because your value is associated with material things, and you will always be susceptible to compromise if your eye be single. You understand? So this message doesn't have a lot of energy in it. I'm running an errand, and I was thinking these thoughts, and that's really the conclusion of the matter. I'm making a comparison, just looking at the flip. Everything has been flipped around and reversed. And I want to go into detail because I'm thinking that clarity might make it make sense. But Our community isn't looking for anything to make sense. We're just looking to be noticed. We're looking, we are addicted to the drug. And this is another thought note that I won't dig into a whole lot now, but I'll just mention because I still think I'm still good on time. But look at a dope fiend. Look at a crackhead. Look at a drug abuser. You know, civilization has taken on the same characteristics that are associated with these kind of consequences of life, and they have carried over into attention. Attention is the new drug. Now I know that that's not a new thing to say, and people acknowledge that, but I don't think, and this is, like I said, why I like looking at things through comparisons and systems and such, so that you can correlate relationships and see if the behavior is consistent across systems. And yeah, man, we're crackheads, myself included, because while I'm in a state of consciousness, I am observing my impulses, behaviors, and the desire, the no, because like the message I said yesterday, no one is holding our signal, and we don't know our, fundamental makeup as human beings, what we require, what we need. I often try to teach this through looking at our pets, cats and dogs. Cats and dogs don't give you an option. They're domesticated, but they don't give you an option. They don't just want, they demand affection. They demand attention. They will crawl up in your lap, crawl on you, do whatever is necessary. You're going to give them attention. And so that same innate desire, because that desire comes as a consequence of self-awareness. Self-awareness requires reflection. Otherwise, it struggles to recognize its own existence. So there's a very fundamental nature to why we behave the way that we do. And it's not been taught to us. It's not been taught to us because it has great utility for the systems that control us. Why would they tell us how we work, or do some historical research? Edward Bernays, marketing in general, and so forth and so on. They want to sell to you. And everything is being designed so that you could be sold to. But here's my mantra. Hold no thing. You don't need to hold no thing. This is why he continues to preach about fasting and prayer. Prayer is alignment. Prayer, I hate these words, because they don't help you. These words don't help you. They communicate a signal of feeling, but they don't carry the function. And that's why this language is so bastardized, because it could be manipulated to any outcome. You take things back to either Aramaic or Hebrew or Greek, you don't have so much ambiguity in communication. But here, that is a deliberate mechanism built into the language. And that mechanism has led you to greater confusion, myself included, And I want to apologize for something. What is it? 8 minutes and some change. I want to apologize because I realized that while doing my own shadow work, not that I've ever tried to sound sophisticated, educated, or using unnecessarily swollen words or anything like that, but after some reflection, I do realize that due to the lack of credentials that I possess in the spaces, in the areas where I have self-proclaimed authority, I think subconsciously, it became necessary to reinforce, my capacity of understanding through articulation. And not that articulation is meant to be unnecessarily complex. Maybe that's something subconscious. I'm just sharing with you that I'm examining myself as well in real time, all the time, and my only intention is to be authentic and present. Now, if that's wrong, that's wrong. And I'm happy to be wrong in that moment. If you point it out to me, I'm willing to examine it. But it needs to be without bias. It needs to be true, and it needs to come in a way that I can recognize that there is no bias associated with it. It's pure data. Because someone like myself, I'm going to love good data, because I operate according to moral and systemic integrity. And I don't want to be right. I want to be corrected. So that's my relationship with the Almighty and the Spirit, and I'm in constant thought, constant connection with that, to the point now where I can barely escape it. I'm literally living the scriptures, when it talks about, he meditates upon his word both day and night. Like the other day I had that thought, and I said, well, wow, this is me, and that doesn't make me any one special. It's just that once the scriptures say the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and when you really understand that, it makes no sense to not route everything through the systems that he designed, because he is the architect. He designed the system. And so if you want the system to work right, or you're trying to figure out how to diagnose the situation or manage the moment where you are, you have to start with the compass. And the compass enables you to orient yourself according to true north, due to the magnetic declination, you understand? And so that's important. Whenever your compass is off, your outcome is going to be off. And that's all I'm trying to argue, is that our compass is way off. And our compass is our feelings. Our compass is our gut. But you don't have enough information. You don't have enough understanding to trust your gut. You only can pull out what you put in. It pains my stomach to have conversations with individuals that feel, but that's the conflict of what I'm saying, because that's what made me self-conscious. I know I just kind of flipped, because I'm thinking and speaking in spaces and realms where I do not possess credentials. But I had some revelations yesterday that really addressed that for me, and it allows me to kind of speak out in a way that is clear and direct in the absence of those credentials, because their credentials are based upon, peer-reviewed papers and so forth. Mine come from experience, the pain, you understand? I have a better education than anyone with credentials will ever have, because, my relationship with these things are based upon the capacity of pattern recognition as well as the experience. All people are going to college or they're getting exposure. They're doing it to get exposure. You're paying for exposure. But the beauty about coming out of the slums or out of the bottom is that you're already exposed. You don't have to pay for the exposure. You understand? You're living in the system. The system is resisting you. So you're getting the best education possible, because the system is telling you what it doesn't like, what it responds to. The only difference between me and any other operator is that I'm paying attention to what the system says. That's the only difference. I'm paying attention to what the system is saying. Like, the system doesn't get to slap me once, slap me twice, slap me the third time. You know what I mean? After that third slap, I'm like, okay, I see how you swinging. I see how you, and then I adjust, and I'll keep going at it. And so that is the pathway of my understanding. And so, anyways, I'll be building on that later, but that caused me a great deal of, what do you say? Apprehension, anxiety, reluctance, lack of confidence, because I work jobs, and even some of the jobs I've had, man, I had no idea how I got them, that's just God, but I'm through hiding at this point now. While I have clear understanding about things that really would help or aid to orient us as it relates to what's taking place, what we're experiencing, really comprehending, and I'll do that in my own way. But I do not intend to be a revolutionary, because we just are not, we're not there. We're not ready. And that's the thing that really, really breaks my heart, because I think for anyone with the awareness desires to make change, because we're in the agitation. We're seeing it when I'm driving. I'm looking around. I'm looking at my people. I'm looking at things. I just want to fix it. It's fixable. It is very fixable. It's fixable within a short amount of time. The kingdom of heaven is in your midst. It's so true. And when you begin to align and can see it and can recognize it, it just becomes disappointing, because it's right there within your grasp. And that's also the consequence. They know that too. That's why they work so hard to keep you fragmented and discombobulated and disjointed. And they know that a nation divided against itself can't stand. And that's exactly what we're doing. But the unfortunate thing is, not only are we doing it, we're celebrating it, we're reinforcing it. There's a scripture that comes to mind that not only do you agree with them, but I can't think of that scripture, the words verbatim, but he's saying that, it's bad enough that you acknowledge it and don't address it, but you co-signing it is what he's saying. You co-signing it. How can you co-sign your own, captivity and then be complaining about it at the same time? You can't let go of the brand. You can't let go of the paycheck. You can't let go of the comfort, but you want salvation. You understand? And this is you could learn a lot by going back to Genesis or Exodus and looking at Israel's mindset when they came out of Egypt and how they were mentally still in Egypt. So look at what Moses and Source had to go through to try to keep folk in line. As a matter of fact, when they finally got to the mount, he was about ready to kill all of them right there. He said, Moses, you better go down here and get your people. He didn't even claim them. He said, you better get your people. And Moses probably thinking like, shit, I don't want to fuck with these niggas either. They try to kill me too. Same thing with Samuel. Samuel, he said, Samuel's like pissed off. And God told Samuel, like, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. So yeah, that's that. And that's it. That's all. I ain't gonna try to wrap this up, close it up. I said what I said, and have a good day.